It's on. Okay, yeah, I'm James Palmer. Senior Solutions Architect is my job title. It doesn't really mean very much. It's a job title, right? But I work for Virtue Motors. We sell cars in the UK. We've got 7,000 employees, £4.5 billion turnover, so pretty large business, and it's all run through Progress. All the cars we sell, all the cars we service, everything is Progress database and everything else. So that's that's me. Yeah, it's just my little pet project, that's right, yeah.
Peter.
Hi guys, I'm Peter May from MRP, I'm the head of DevOps. We've got about 70 odd customers, thousands of databases across about 250 different servers, and we've got about 3,000 plus end users on some of these systems. And we've mainly in financial areas, and our company's been around for 25 to 30 years. Really progress in that area.
Hi, I'm Roald, Senior Technician Specialist at MIP. Peter's taken most of my sayings here, so yeah, so we work together.
Cool. Mr. Simon, the one and only.
Yes, Simon is my name, Simon Gaarthuis. I'm from the Netherlands. Gaarthuis. G. Just do it like Gaarthuis. Doesn't matter. But you can say guardhouse, it's okay.
It's close enough.
I will understand it. I'm in Progress for 30 years now, and I support DBA customers in the Netherlands and via the Netherlands also in other countries. And I use ProTop for that.
I'm Dr. Dalaglu. I'm president and senior DBA of OmegaServe. We are a managed services company using ProTop and supporting close to 5,000 users, or if we're talking about licensing, it's more like a few hundred. Oops, oh boy, okay, scratch that. And that's it.
Cool. And the reason I picked these panelists, I invited these panelists, is you have James, an end user, you have a managed service provider, Simon and Nectar, and you have an ISV who has an application that they host, but they also support other customers in South Africa and in all of Africa, really. So I wanted to bring this kind of cross-section of people who use ProTop to support their end users
and another thing that's really helpful is when, one of the things I've been looking at in our system is we've got individual reads for loads and loads of tables if your startup parameters are correct. So I can see, I just found it out this week, looking at a year's worth of data, I can see that the number of reads on a particular table is going up at exactly the same rate as the number of records that are being added to that table, which means that something is reading the whole of that table over and over and over again. I can send that to development and they can fix the code. Yeah, really, really easy.
That's all I had to say about that. Yes.
Yes.
We have to start it from
It's okay, we have some audio somewhere. And my voice is loud enough that your mic picked it up. So. All right, so we just prepared some questions here for the guys. We had a talk, and again, if you guys have questions for the panelists or myself, please don't hesitate. But really, the first question I wanted to throw to the panelists was really like, you know, what was the situation? Where were you in your life? I was like, just got divorced, and okay. Where were you like in your professional life that made you sort of come out here and say, oh, I need a solution like ProTop, and made you search for a solution? And Nectar's primed, he wants to go first. So he's got the mics, go.
I got the notes, I got everything. Yeah, so I was originally part of White Star, so I already know the tool inside out. I know what it's capable of. I know what the competitors' tools can or cannot do. And so it was an easy choice for me. So that's, I guess, where I was at that point of my...
Cool.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I knew ProTop pretty well as well when I started at Virtue. Been a user, customer, I think, I'm not sure, but certainly been involved with ProTop stuff for a long time. And when we got to the new place and found that we had some monitoring in place and so on, it was fine. But everything that we monitored was something that had been a problem before. So, I don't know, maybe loads of reads. So we're now monitoring reads of a particular table or what have you. And a bit later down the road, we find another problem. Okay, we didn't have any monitoring for that, so we'll write a little program to monitor that one. And so now we're monitoring that one. And that's been going on for maybe 15 years, and we're monitoring various things. But every now and again, something will happen which we're not monitoring, and we could have done with having monitored. So now we're going to close the door because the whole horse is way off down the road, and we're now monitoring it. But maybe it might never happen again. And so I said to the guys, look, we need to actually have a tool which is monitoring everything, and is proactively monitoring and telling us about the stuff that's broken, or could be done better, or is about to break, and that sort of thing. Rather than reacting to stuff that's happened already, we're able to proactively monitor what's there. And eventually got my message across, and eventually they agreed to have a talk with Paul, and eventually we got the product bought. We're a big business. Spending money is hard. So yeah, but we got there, and and now we have that proactive monitoring. We see stuff before it happens, and we're in a much better place.
Yeah, and it was a case like it happens so often where there's a particular event that occurs, right? And then all of a sudden, ProTop is much more important because, something's going on right now and the business is being affected, and we get ProTop in there, and then ProTop helps find the solution to that problem. So it's always nicer when you guys have a problem that we can solve.
Well, I persuade my customer to take ProTop to see what the results are of all the changes that we make, not only in the code, but also in the parameters and in the setup of the database. And by using this, we could make all our actions valuable and make them, what's the word for that? That I can be responsible for it, and they see what they pay, because they see the differences. And the people also experience the new performance, and we use the tool for that to show them also what's happened. And for example, you also pick out bad stuff quite fast, and you can see if you have thousands and millions of reads, and you bring them down to only 10,000, then the system gets relaxed. They don't have to buy new hardware. They can continue on the current hardware, and it's not that bad as they thought that it was. So it helps.
Cool.
And sorry, another reason for me to use ProTop is together with the organization of White Star, that I am a single person company and I cannot provide 24 hours in a day. So when something happens and I'm not there, I'm diving in the airplane or doing something else in the bar, then there's an organization, there's an organization who is behind me, which we work back to back together, and they can pick it up in the worst case scenario. So for me, it makes me, it enables me to take big customers, even though I'm small.
Yeah, cool. Thanks. And we, sorry, and and we do that for a bunch of our customers where we'll do just vacation support, right? They don't need us to pay us for 24/7 support all year long, but the DBA is allowed to go on vacation every now and then without a laptop and a phone and, you know, all the other attachments. So we'll cover for a couple of weeks while the guy's on or the girl's on the vacation. Yeah. Roll.
So building on top of what James has said, yeah, we've had monitoring, but just at infrastructure level. So getting ProTop in to monitor the OpenEdge database and like Simon's also said, you know, parameter-wise and all of that has helped us a lot as well. You know, we can actually get now down to the root cause and analyze it properly. So yeah.
I mean, just having one application, but at different customers, it performs different because they use it different. And trying to then at every customer go and monitor your database. And rather reinventing, or instead of reinventing the wheel, we'd rather use the tools. Otherwise, we could have written our own queries from VSTs and getting the data. But bringing the data also to a central portal was just made up for us to get that tool in. And the advantage was that I didn't have to go and get a company that does it for me. ProTop, you can get the tool, and we even got the whole portal running in South Africa for the Africa region, where the data stays local and we can actually run the tool, and only when you need the support, you can actually then reach out as well and get the guys to assist you there. But the tool can be administered and run by yourself. You don't need external DBAs to assist. You can run it internally, but then you have the experience reaching out, and they can assist you further there.
Cool. Questions?
Maybe a small comment. I think it's underrated how easy it is if you look at the dashboard to see everything at one time from a month, from a year, or 5 years, as opposed to looking at log files. It saves hours and hours. And if you look at log files, you're looking for specific errors, but you don't see any trends and you don't see anything coming up. Because
Even if you look
at the dashboard, you can see, oh, next year we will have this issue. I'm pretty sure we will have that.
Even if we look to the graphs and you put it like a month or 2 months, you see nothing.
Nothing, exactly.
And then you put it half year or a year, and hey, I see a
something.
change. So it really makes a difference to have this long history of graphs, because you can show the management, hey, something is happening, or we have to buy new hardware, or
Usually, if I see something like that, I go back to my...
Sorry, Guido's a customer too, by the way. Just he's not a plant in the.
No, when we see something like that, usually I watch back my emails around that date, and then we see, oh, we introduced some new program, we did something else, and then you usually have the suspect, right?
Yeah.
As opposed to, we have no idea what we've done. Because the system is working, it's okay.
It's happened twice now. Twice this year, where a customer has data in the schema area, and they're about to hit that 256 gig limit because of the block size and the blocks per cluster and records per block and everything. So they're about to hit the 256 gig, and they didn't know. We turned ProTop on, and the alert came up, and we're like, "Did you know this?" And they're like, "No, what?" And you're like, "Oh, you." So, and then because we trend DB analysis data too, after about 6 or 7 weeks of data, we could see how fast. So they know that they have 3 months roughly of size left in the schema area before the database essentially crashes. So now, we have some automated dump and load tooling that we gave them, part of ProTop. They have all of that set, and really they're just waiting for like a 4-hour window from the customer to be able to dump and load that one table out of the schema area and put it into a type 2 storage area. But then it happened once, and then it just happened again last week at another customer. So these are the kinds of things that catch you and and you go down, there's nothing you can do, and I'm sorry, you got to move the table. So it's going to be 4 hours, 6 hours, 8 hours, whatever, depending on the hardware that you have. Completely avoidable if you had been alerted just a month before or 2 months before.
Paul, we had a system database which holds only a few settings for printers and users and stuff like that. And one developer, he thought, oh, I can do something over there in a key value table, which we use for some settings. He put in session information of web services, and he didn't delete it. So this database was like 20 megabytes, and suddenly it turned 1 gigabyte. It went like this, and you don't see that normally, only the backup, of course, but now we could see it directly in the graphs, and we pinpointed that. Hey, what are you doing? Oh, sorry, I didn't delete the records.
Yeah.
So that's how you can find it quite easy, these issues.
Cool. All right. What happened to question 2? I had a question too.
The other big thing that we found, the benefit of especially the portal, is that it's not just for your DBAs, it's also for your developers. So we've got different teams looking at the same graphs or the same areas where the database, the DBAs can actually go and see how the performance of the database are, the configs, when ARBIs, all of those things are being going out of some of the scales. Where when you go to the table and when you do patching and stuff, your developers and architects can go look at the performance and how the application works. But looking at the same data and the different screens on the same portal. So it's not dedicated to one area. You've actually got different views and different teams can work on the same data there.
Even the IT department can look at it.
Yeah, absolutely. Go ahead, Jim.
Yeah, the other thing, of course, you can do with ProTop is to configure it to monitor server metrics as well, so not just the database, so monitoring the server. Particularly useful if you're in a virtualized environment. We're in AWS. The AWS guy sits there, and the graphs on AWS are just trundling along. There's no change or anything else like that, and they think everything's fine. We put the server metrics on, and in fact, one of the first big problems that we realized was we were having major performance degradation throughout as the day got busier and busier and busier. The performance degraded, and it was fine on-prem, absolutely fine on-prem, but it was a problem in AWS. And eventually, with the server metrics and everything else, we could actually see that we were hitting a hard limit of IOPS on one of the drives on the server. And it turns out that when the AWS machine was commissioned, someone had taken the wrong type of disk by accident when they set it up. So not using the fastest disk available, using the next tier down, which had 150 IOPS or whatever it was, hard limit, and we were consistently hitting that, and it just can't go any faster. I can't do any more because it's limited. We changed that in the AWS configuration, and immediately the performance problem went away. But that's through being able to monitor what the server is actually doing rather than what AWS thinks it's doing. Because AWS underreports stuff all the time, particularly on CPUs and IOPS and things like that. So.
Yeah, and you can see it. Like I remember his graph because you saw in the morning IOPS went like this, and then poof, it was flat, and you're like, okay, that's your IOPS limit. You're obviously hitting that limit throughout the day, and the cost for that disk to jack it up was zero. I mean, it's maybe €100 a month or something to increase the IOPS. It wasn't even a very big disk. It wasn't even the database disk. It was a temp-file disk, right? So this £4 billion business is being performance hampered by a £100 solution, essentially, and you just saw the graph,
We'd budgeted for the faster disk anyway.
Exactly,
So, yeah.
and didn't spend the money on it. So, cool. And I guess the next question we'll get to is really like and he segued already into the second question, which was, well, what was kind of the problem that you were facing or your customers were facing that kind of introduced you or at least made you go out and look for a solution like ProTop? Like a specific problem.
Well, the customer where I am currently doing a lot of work, they have this old 25-year-old Progress application, and they replaced it by Azure DevOps, I don't know, something Microsoft, which they were building in another country. And they said this is going to be the future, and the old software was at the back door and almost kicked out. They only had to hold a few years. So I picked it up and I showed them where the bad stuff was. I did it with ProTop. we made it better, and then it got in favor again. So it got back on the shelf, and we're using it now. And even the board is now saying we're going to roll out more sites with this software. So that's from almost in the drain back until the open until the table.
Cool.
I don't know how to say that, but something
Yeah,
like that.
absolutely. Cool.
So we had a banking client that they also started having performance issues on a specific table, and ProTop actually helped us identify that how the code was written, it wasn't using the index correctly. And when we added a new index for that, you could actually see the trend go from quite high down to quite low. So yeah, it's also helped us pick up code-wise about indexing and all of that.
Yeah, I mean, with the other scenario we had is a customer went and upgraded the hardware on the Azure infrastructure, and there's certain levels that they don't expose to you, but upgrading your CPUs from 32 to 64, you would expect to get a faster performance, but we actually got degradation because they went onto slower CPUs. And literally now trying to prove that, the only way we could find it was in the ProTop, using the
Bogo MIPS.
the Bogo MIPS,
Yeah.
to actually go and show the hardware provider that they're actually giving us those CPUs. And those things, if you're saying you're upgrading in those environments, they never expose those sort of details to you. And even with normal monitoring, you won't pick those things up. But I mean, but with these tools, we've been able to find that.
Yeah, we always say we monitor infrastructure from an open edge perspective for exactly that. Because if you're hosted, especially with private hosting, where they don't expose a lot of this information to you, or even if you have your own internal, VMware team and they vMotion you, they're not going to tell you they're going to vMotion you. They just vMotion you, and now you went from a Xeon Platinum to an E5, and your CPU performance went down 40%, but nobody tells you that, except Monday morning all your users are screaming, right? So you can't I've seen it. No, you can, because they're in compatibility mode. I have seen it.
From what to what?
From Xeon to E5.
If compatibility modes and
Yeah.
they're low enough, you can do that.
And yes, exactly. Yeah, but we saw the Bogo MIPS on ProTop go like this. So we're like, okay, you vMotioned us. I know exactly the date and time that you vMotioned us. So.
We had a problem. Anyone who was in my talk just earlier will have heard about this problem already, but it's no harm in repeating it. We had a problem with it essentially boiled down to a batch process, but it was we were seeing performance degradations at specific times throughout the day, and we worked out the batch process. But because of the fact that ProTop allows you to drill right down into the data, so to see reads and OS reads at a table level, we were able to identify what process it was a lot more easily than if we were just trying to work out which process it was based on the times and so on. Because if you're looking at reads on a database level, we do 4, 5, 6 million reads a second across the database. A table that's suddenly reading 50,000 as opposed to 10,000 records at that particular moment in time isn't going to make much difference to that graph. It's just going to carry on in a straight line. But with ProTop, you can drill into the tables and say, okay, my stock table is suddenly it's got spikes on it like this at exactly the same times as the problems are happening. You've got a graph there with 50, 100 tables that are all being monitored and everything else. You've got to slowly click through each one of them to find which one's the right one. But eventually you get to the stock table. I should have started at the other end of the alphabet and worked backwards, of course. But eventually you get to the stock table and you suddenly see that there's these big spikes in the reads, OS reads, in fact, in this case. And we were then able to say, what's reading stock at 9 o'clock, 11 o'clock, 1 o'clock? And, it's this batch process. Okay, development, your problem. It eventually got the problem fixed. But without ProTop there, we would probably still be in the dark as to what's causing it, other than the fact that we know that these hours it's happening, but we've got 15 batch processes that all kick off at that time of day. It's just that one that's causing the problem.
So actually, after the talk this morning from James, I remembered another issue. So we had a customer who's got APIs that's coming in, and with the API it brings the XML data set. So simply taking that and storing it in the table, that's fine. You can see on the table the writes. So And it doesn't mean that ProTop's just going to tell you there's one problem. You might need to look at two different areas. Where we then started seeing that same table getting a lot of high reads as well. Where if it's just an API coming in, you're just storing the data for if you want to look at a history, that table shouldn't have high reads. And we then actually realized that the guys were using that data set as a mini database inside the database because they didn't want to add new fields to the database. So constantly they were reading this XML, putting into a mem pointer, creating a data set, reading info, updating it, and then storing it back in the data set. But looking at the reads and writes together for that table, we started seeing these patterns, and those things were only visible in the history of the ProTop areas. And with that, after fixing that and just adding one or two fields on a table, we've actually dropped all those performance issues in your site.
And the graphs give you a glance of what's happening, but you can use the character version to go into depth, switching on the client statement cache, and it will exactly pinpoint you to the line, and will tell you the table, the user, even the PID, and where to look. And then you can quite easily solve your problem, these tools together. First the graphs, and then the TTY ProTop.
Yeah, even now we're basically enabling client statement cache across the board for our clients because the machines are fast enough now to handle it. Maybe 5 years ago, 1 or 2 generations ago, we were a little more apprehensive about it. But now, other than client server connections, anything that's shared memory, we just enable client statement cache across the board. The performance hit is negligible, and you always have all of that information now all the time in the alerts. You don't have to go, like Simon said, and go and turn it on just for one user and catch the code and the program, and you just have it on and the alert comes, oh, you were reading the order table 87 million times. It was this guy, this program, this line of code, and it just comes in automatically now. Nectar?
Yeah, and on that point, we had a new customer recently that came to us with locking issues. So their users were having locking issues throughout the day, and they couldn't find the problem. So they came to us, we installed ProTop, we enabled client statement caching, and we're able to see right away in the alerts what was the offending process, the program they were running, the line of code, and with that, the developer was able to resolve like 80% of the blocking issues. And incidentally, since we started monitoring, we also found that they're doing significant reads on their one of their transaction tables, like doing some SQL query like every 15 minutes on it, and reading the whole table. So that's the next issue to fix, but
that nobody even knew was happening.
Exactly, no one even knew, incidentally.
Yeah, we were having, this just happened this week, because when we see these kinds of things all the time. So customer calls to complain of performance. So we look, and the alerts are telling them, we're like, you're not running the AIW, the BIW, or the APW. What happened? So they're like, what do you mean we're not running them? We're like, look, there's the alerts. You're not running AI. So they turned them on, and of course the problem was resolved right away. They went back. Someone went and decided to enhance a script that started the databases and inserted some kind of error in the script. And so when they restarted the databases the weekend before, the AIW, BIW, APW just never started. Nobody noticed. The alerts were being generated from ProTop, but those alerts in ProTop, we don't, those aren't wake me up in the middle of the night alerts. So they didn't notice them, but the alerts were there. The information was there. So when they contacted us, I'm like, well, did you look? It shows you right here. There's no AIW. So they just turned them on, and then the problem just went away. And you can automate all of that too. I mean, we don't usually do it for AIW, BIW, because it's in the startup scripts. But I mean, ProTop has that ability to say, oh, it's not running. Well, then run it, automatically. Do you have questions from anyone? Yeah.
Log files, how are they handled? Is it also turn data on error code, or can you access the log files also in the dashboard?
So the question is, how are log files handled? So we stream the log files, and we capture the errors, and then there is a configuration in ProTop that you say, if you get this message in the log file, then do this action. So generate an alert, for example, and then there's different levels of alerts. So, if you get, I don't know, user connected, 451, 452, we ignore those. There's a million of those. But if I get system error, memory violation 49, maybe that'll generate an alarm in ProTop. And so you have all of that history of all of those alerts that were being generated in the log file. But we ignore, 99% obviously of the log file. And then if you have a non-database log file, like an app server log file, you can configure any kind of what am I saying? Character matching, right? You can use any kind of regular expression type of thing to match strings in an application log file or an app server log file or any kind of log file you want.
And something else that you can do as well is that but there are some standard ones that come shipped with the product called alert enhancers. You can write your own ones as well. Because obviously how often, is there an error or something like that, and you want to know at that moment in time what's going on with that user or what's going on with that client or whatever else. But by the time you actually see the alert and respond to it, log on to the server, run some code or whatever, the problem's gone away, the user's disconnected or whatever else, and the situation's not there anymore. So the alert enhancers, what that does when the monitor sees a particular error or a particular scenario, it can run a script, which can be some P code or something else, which will then gather all of that information that you would be gathering yourself and return that with the error back to the dashboard. So when you hover over that error on the dashboard, you can see all of that enhanced information. Some of them happen automatically. So for example, if there's certain things happening, it will come back with the client statement cache information in the alert so that you can actually see what's happening or various other things like that. But those are really powerful, and you can customize those to do whatever you want, really. And that makes life a heck of a lot easier. So you get a lot of information about errors much more reliably than you ever would, particularly in the middle of the night. How long does it take you to get up, get your teeth brushed, and and get onto the server before whereas and sometimes these errors happen in the middle of the night, and nobody really responds to them. But in the morning, there's someone, your director says to you, what happened last night? And you're thinking, well, I don't know, I was asleep. But now you've got all that information. ProTop has collected all the additional information that you want and provided it to you in the dashboard. I can just go with my mouse and hover over it, and a little pop-up comes up, and it tells me all the information that I can have. And I can say, well, here you go, Bruce, here's all that information. He's like, oh, that's brilliant, great, thank you very much. I can go back to the board and tell them. And and everyone's happy. So.
It's the same with long-running transactions. This morning I had an email long-running transaction, so I sent it to the team. These are developers, consultants, and some key users. And immediately they respond by saying, hey, I was opening this, having this open. And then they find the software, they make it better, and we won't have long-running transactions anymore. So they kill them from every occurrence that we have. We go find them and try to mitigate and kill change the code that it won't come back anymore. The code was built by maybe more consultants than developers.
Right.
They didn't code that good. And then we end up with all this stuff. But now we're cleaning it up, and that's really good because it gets more stable over time. So that's really nice.
And long transactions is an interesting one because some customers, they're like, look, if it's an interactive user in a long transaction, just automatically kill them. Don't even tell me. I don't even care. It's, just kill them. But if it's a batch process that's doing something important, like what are you, if you kill MRP and then the next day, the data's not there, or if you're doing end of day, GL calculations, you can't just kill that in the middle of the night. Someone's going to get mad at you the next morning. So yeah, you have that ability to say, okay, after this many minutes, send a warning after this many, and then at some point in time, wake someone up in the middle of the night because there's a risk of the BI growing or the database coming down or some other much more serious effect. And at that point, then a human is notified to make a decision about it and say, okay, decide, either you run out of BI space in 5 minutes, or I kill MRP or whatever the calculation is, and someone accountant's going to yell at you tomorrow. So I'd rather have the accountant yell at me tomorrow than all of the users yell at me now, and so you're able to make that decision, kind of thing.
I mean, and currently we're talking about ProTop and mainly production databases and production environments, but it's not limited to that. Currently, I mean, whenever we have a problem, we always firstly go to ProTop to see whatever performance issue is. But we've even taken further that all our non-prods always have ProTop running as well. And part of a release, they must actually do a pre and a post look on ProTop as well to verify they haven't introduced anything. It's part of the release process that they need to start looking at that evidence. And that's really the first go-to environment. And even where we're running the DR, we're also running ProTop in the DR databases, because most of the sites, we're actually moving all the SQL connection reporting data warehouses to rather connect to your secondary environment. But with that, you can also see what the reads and writes on that database, well, not writes, but all the reads from these third-party tools, that if they were in your production, what would have been the impact there as well. So you can also help and assist and streamline it on your secondary environments.
And it's a great point. So we don't charge for non-production environments. So when you license ProTop, we look at your production licenses, how many licenses of your vendor application or your progress licenses that you have, but then you can monitor all of dev, test, QA. We want you to monitor it because if you catch the problem in dev or QA, the problem will never come to production. And that's really, again, we're all about problem avoidance, right? I don't want any problems. I don't want to see any problems, or at the very least, I want to catch them early so I can mitigate the effect on the business. So we don't charge for monitoring your non-production environments.
And sort of on the whole idea of catching problems before they happen, another thing on the list of cool things you can do with ProTop, which you maybe wouldn't have thought about in your own monitoring, is the ability to monitor on whatever you want to monitor as well. So if you can get trends on. So, for example, we have another development team. They don't do progress code. They do JavaScript type sort of coding and everything else. But they have a direct ability to, with their system, to mark vehicles as no longer in stock. And it happens from time to time that they release a change because they're typical web developer type people. They just release stuff to live. They're not testing it, and it's constantly And every now and again we just get this situation where we've suddenly got no cars in stock on the website, and that's not. We don't tend to sell that many cars in 5 minutes. It'd be nice, wouldn't it? But we used to have that problem where sometimes they'd release it, and it would take someone phoning up from one of the dealerships to say, hang on a minute, there's no cars available for sale, what's going on? And then you sort of dig into it. Whereas now we've got this, our piece of P code that we've written, which says this is how many vehicles are for sale on the website. Put that into ProTop, and it's there. And if it goes below a certain threshold, we can send an alarm out to everybody. Someone's fucked up again. Yeah, exactly. It does have again and you can customize what that message says as well. So yeah, I can literally say someone's fucked up again and send it. But yeah, so but you can monitor all sorts of things like that. And it's very easy to do. It's literally just a piece of P code you've got to ship to your server, and it just gets added to the graphs and everything like that. And that makes my life a heck of a lot easier.
More questions? Comments? Guys, closing thoughts? Closing thoughts? Any last thoughts? We'll wrap up even a little early. It's great, but
any last words? Yeah.
Last words? Excuse me.
I don't think I could do my job without ProTop. I think it's probably my closing thoughts really. It's easy to say because I am there doing it with ProTop, but I did do it without ProTop for a while, and you feel like you're blind without ProTop. You're sitting there, you can look at stuff, you can look at the reactive monitoring that we had, you can maybe look at some log files, you can maybe look at you can look at the real-time client for ProTop. Yeah, sure, because it's that you can put that on for free. That's not a problem. So but with the trending and everything else, having that insight that's something's changed or something's not working or something's alerting or whatever else, just gives you that visibility. You know, I can log onto my machine at 9 o'clock in the morning. I can see a whole list of all the things that have happened overnight. I don't need to then go and look anywhere else to find out that there's been problems. It's all there. So it's a difference between being pretty blind and reactive to seeing everything more maybe than you maybe want to see. I mean, sometimes you can go looking for problems that aren't even there because because you've got more information than you actually need to work with, and it's like actually you should be doing something else. But no, it's you just got all that information at your fingertips to sort out problems proactively, and it's such a great feeling phoning up a customer, or phoning up, in my case, phoning up users and telling them that the database has gone down, we're bringing it back up again, rather than them phoning me up to say the database has gone down, can you sort it out? It's much nicer.
Thank you.
After setting up after imaging, the next thing you should do is set up ProTop.
Everyone's running after imaging already. I know it's.
Surely if you should put ProTop on first, and I'll tell you to put.
That's it. Will.
Yeah, and it's not just the ProTop that gives you the stats and all the trends and all of that, but also the support that Whitestar give you as well. You know, if we had a major issue with a client where the load shot up after a Red 8 update, and yeah, Whitestar was great and gave us the support and the assistance and all of that. So yeah, no, it's great.
I mean, you can't always just be one DBA looking at all the environments, all the databases yourself. ProTop helps you gather in a central place. You can have multiple DBAs, architects, developers, all looking at the same data in one place. And it just makes it much better that I don't need to log into all 70 servers and try and make sure all the thousands of databases up and try and find trends there. You can actually let it come to you and get everyone else to utilize the tool there. Yeah, so it's actually much better.
Oh, sorry.
Yeah. Poor Nectar, he's always going
Yeah, no, I mean, I like how ProTop has evolved over the years. There's a development team behind it. There's constantly new features being added. Like some of the recent ones that we asked for, the uptime monitor. And bottom line, without ProTop, we wouldn't be able to do so much and monitor so many environments at one point. It really is a single pane of glass, and it's like turning on the lights once we install it, like finding all these other stuff, like after imaging not being turned on. Like you have 100 environments, and you don't have time to go and check each one, and then you turn it on, you say, hey, whoa, there's no AI.
Yes.
In there.
Somebody just forgot.
Yeah.
Somebody just forgot.
We're human, right?
Yeah. Simon?
Okay, and of course it's true. One graph, one picture says more than 1,000 words or 1,000 promo screens. You can look at it and all the figures going everywhere. But if you see one graph, you know enough, and then you can dig into it, and that's much relaxer than trying to catch the promo.
Cool. Last questions? Yeah.
How is it deployed?
Yeah,
how do you deploy ProTop to servers?
So there's principally two ways. If you have a relatively small environment, 5 or 10 servers, then it's manual. It's just not worth it to automate it. For application partners, typically what they'll do is they'll just integrate it into their CI/CD, so that way when they do application updates, they can do ProTop updates at the same time. So really it depends on the size of the environment. But I mean, if you're on Linux especially, what we do a lot of times is we'll just configure one master, and then we'll tarball that up and then just deploy that one out and then tweak each one, just to change the names a little bit, for example. But usually when we deploy, the first one takes about a day. A lot of it is knowledge transfer. Then the second one takes, half a day, and then afterwards they're really just an hour each to deploy afterwards.
And
Sorry?
Like over Teams call or
Yeah. Yeah, we don't. We almost never go on. The only time we go on site, some banks like we're not even allowed to touch the keyboard. Like we have we have one customer, you need 6 people on a conference call because each person is allowed to type different commands, you know. Oh, get Guido on the phone. We need to, you know, do this command. And so it's very rare now. We do everything remote on a Teams call now or something. Yeah.
You mentioned at the beginning the regional coverage. Do you have something available for Switzerland?
So your data would be in Frankfurt then if it was in Switzerland, probably.
Frankfurt is not Switzerland.
No, it's not. It's not. But we could. I mean, if Amazon has a location in Switzerland, I don't know by heart if they have a data center.
I think they've got one in Zurich. So.
They got one in Zurich. Yeah. So then we would deploy in Zurich, and your data would be in Zurich. So simple as that. Or a lot of times, yeah, we do for larger environments. We'll just spin up a private portal. It might be in AWS, but it'll be, you know, protop.yourcompanyname.com, so that you have your private portal for the data.
It's worth adding though to that, Andrea, that the data that ProTop collects, unless you tell it otherwise, is just metadata about the database. There's no actual data about your customers or anything else that actually gets transferred into Amazon or into the portal. You can collect that data, that sort of data, if you want to, but it is metadata about the database. So in terms of GDPR or the equivalent, it's a lot easier to justify.
I still have to answer the 300 questionnaires from the security guys. Do you have a policy for, I don't know. You get these questionnaires from the third party. Who's big enough here that you deal with a third party vendor assessment? You do, eh? Okay, I'm going to charge you extra for you. It's hours and hours and hours. Holy one. Any other questions? Everyone? So you come by the booth if you want a demo, if you have more specific questions. Who's in our Battle Pong Blitz competition still? Who's in? Well, we got a couple of people. You got in the back. Okay. So Battle Pong Blitz, that's tonight. Elimination round. So come and see us at the booth. Come see us at the Nautilus if you have any questions or anything. Thanks everyone for coming, and enjoy your lunch. Thank you.